Hi guys, it's Jan from Melbourne Foodforest. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favourite fruits, and that's blueberries. I'm going to be giving you my top tips and tricks on how to grow epic blueberries. Hi guys, thank you for tuning in today. Now today we're going to be talking about blueberries, and they were one of the first fruits I ever grew. Even before we moved into this food forest and started developing it, I had some blueberries in pots. And I started with one plant, and it's actually this one here, our blue rose blueberry. And it exploded now. We've got 7 plants, and it's never quite enough because they're such an addictive fruit to grow. Many people think they're difficult to grow because we just never really thought about growing them in a backyard before, but they're actually ridiculously easy, provided you get one thing right, and that is the soil pH. Blueberries are one of the few plants that really love acidic soil. And so if you go back to high school chemistry, we know that pH 7 is around neutral, and blueberries really like it down from about 4 to 5.5, so they really like it quite acidic. So provided you get that right and a few other things, you can be swimming in berries. And for us, this plant, you can see how woody it is here. I've had this for over 10 years, and it's given us kilos and kilos of berries, and each plant can produce 6 to 9 kilos of berries, so they're well worth growing. And you can see how compact they are here. They can grow in just a large pot and don't take up much space at all. So most of the time I've had our blueberries, I've had it in a pot, but last year I decided to create this berry bed where I planted 4 of our blueberries into that bed along with raspberries, because they also like acidic conditions, but the raspberries are not as fussy as blueberries, so they can go a bit higher pH. So I thought I'd create this amazing berry patch, which sounded wonderful in my dreams. And then what happened was, you can still see here, is that the raspberries took over the whole bed. They're so vigorous. So the blueberries ended up getting choked by raspberries, and you can see I hastily moved them into pots. So we need to address problems in our garden as soon as they happen. So I noticed that they were getting choked over the season. So towards the end of the season last year, I hastily moved them into pots, and you can still see some of the raspberry friends have come along for the ride here. So there's a few things we're going to do today, which is also removing any unwanted competitors in the pot. But yeah, so don't grow your blueberries with your raspberries. You could do a whole blueberry bed. I had a raised bed filled with them, but yeah, don't mix them with caneberries because they're so vigorous and will take over. So we started with 1 plant, and now we've got 7 plants. And so yes, that's because we love berries and you can never get enough blueberries, but also because growing many different varieties of blueberries enables them to cross-pollinate. And cross-pollination actually leads to larger, juicier and more prolific fruiting. So if you find that your lone blueberry plant isn't producing the goods, one of the reasons could be it needs a companion and it's a bit lonely. So let me introduce you to some of the varieties we have. So this one here is a sunshine blue, and we've got 2 of them. You'll see this one's looking much healthier than another, other than this raspberry plant. So this one's looking decent, but this one over here is pretty sad, and we'll talk about why that is in a second. The sunshine blue is an awesome all-rounder. It's quite tolerant of higher pH, and it's also more tolerant of warmer temperatures. So if you live in a warmer zone, these could be the one for you. Because blueberries do need chill over winter, and they're measured by the number of chill hours they require to fruit. The sunshine blue actually require quite low chill hours. And they're also a shorter, more compact plant with small leaves. Cat interruption. Yeah, so they're a good compact one for all backyards. Now, if you just getting started, they could be a good one to get into. Next is our blue rose. So this is my oldest blueberry. You can see how woody it's gotten. It's a much taller growing variety than the sunshine blue with huge leaves. And come late autumn, early winter, this turns the most beautiful crimson, orange, pink and yellow colored. So this is a great one for dramatic looking autumn colors, and it does produce quite big berries. They're not the sweetest, but the autumn leaves and the size of the berries really make up for it. And moving this way, we've got the 4 new additions to our food forest, and we just got these last year. So they started off as teensy tiny plants about this big, and now in 1 year they've gone huge and really branched out. So we've got a Rika, a Nui, a Rahi and a Maru. And so the Maru is the only one that has produced this season, and the berries are huge and delicious. It's also a low chill variety, which is awesome. So they're all going to cross-pollinate and help us produce many more and bigger berries, which is what we're after. So as we're walking around, you'll see, look at this one. Look at the color of the leaves. Now, what do you think? That's not normal, is it? That's not healthy. And the reason for this is when I potted them up in a hurry to get them out of the raspberries way, I decided to do an experiment and plant one of these into standard potting mix. So one with high pH, probably around 7 or above. I find potting mix is usually 7 to 8. And look at this. So it looks like it's got a nutrient deficiency, but in reality, the pH is just too high for the blueberry to take up the nutrients it needs, because plants can only take up certain nutrients at particular pHs, and blueberries really need a low pH environment to be able to take up nutrients. So this is an experiment that really shows you got to get your potting mix right, and that's what we're going to be talking about and focusing on today, because that's critical, getting your soil right. And you can see here, this sunshine blue also looks quite sick with that yellow veining, which suggests a deficiency. So this was another one that I potted up into a standard potting mix just as an experiment to kind of prove the point that I already knew. But hey, that's what experiments really are, aren't they? To test a hypothesis. So you can see that's not looking healthy at all compared to this sunshine blue potted at the same time. Look at that. Glossy, green, healthy, because I used the right potting mix and the right soil pH to start with. So let's talk about that now. So what we have here is your secret weapon to happy blueberry plants, and I've been using this for the past decade for my happy blue rose. And the blueberries where I, did that experiment on them and tortured them a little, I put them into a standard potting mix with, pH neutral or above, which they usually test at. So now, this Scott's Osmocote is the only brand I know that actually makes an acid, low pH potting mix formula. And you can see here, acidic pH 4.8 to 5.8. And that is the happy zone for our blueberries. And we're going to do a pH test in a second, just to test that. So this potting mix is marketed at roses, gardenias and azaleas, as well as rhododendrons, and they're flowers, all pretty flowers that thrive in the same conditions as our blueberries. They're lower canopy plants in the forest. And what we're looking for with potting mix is the ticks here. So what we want to see is this Australian standard certification, because without the ticks, you could be buying anything, because there's no regulation about what a potting mix has to have. So if you're not seeing the ticks, then you could just be buying pine bark mulch, or it could be anything that you're getting. They could put anything in there. There's no rules. So what we want to see is not just the ticks, but also red ticks, because red ticks tells you it's a premium potting mix. And so you can see here, it's got everything we need. It's got food already. It's got a wetting agent to make sure the soil stays moist, and that's critical for blueberries because they need constantly moist soil. It's got seaweed and growth stimulants, and it's got trace elements and iron and magnesium, all the good stuff that plants need in one bag. So this is easy. If you want to have a happy blueberry plant producing lots of berries that the kids can walk around and pick off and feel like a bit of a success, yes, I've done this, then this is the one that you need to start off with. And we're going to do a pH test now to see what this pH comes up as, if it is what it claims it is, because we always need to test and know things for ourselves and not just believe what we read on the packet. So I'm just going to cut this open. Right, yep, tearing works as well. And let's do a little pH test. So I've got my, dirty my hands, dust. Got my pH test kit, which I use in the garden all the time. You know, I usually test before planting at the start of the season. It's really cheap and economical, and you know, it has hundreds of tests per box. So it's pretty easy. So this is what we're going to be comparing it to. For blueberries, we really want to see it kind of a green, light green to yellow color even. So this kind of around 5, 5.5 or 6 is the area we want to be in, and not over here, because all the other potting mixes and manures and compost I've tested come right up over here on the chart. So we wouldn't want to plant our blueberry into that. That wouldn't be very nice. So what we do is you follow the instructions on the kit. So you take a small sample, put your finger in a bit, don't take the ones on the edge of the bag, so kind of take something in the middle, an average kind of sample. That's a nice, really nice moist mix. We take out any really chunky bits, so I pulled out, you know, these big bits, and you know, you want a fine kind of sample. Now what we do is, there's this indicator liquid, as you can see this is well used. Put this on a few drops and you use your little paddle. So I'll put a few drops on, usually about 3-4 drops, and use your little paddle to kind of moisten it all, flatten it down a bit, mix it up. Okay, now that's ready to have this powder, barium sulfate, and we just puff it onto it, and it's going to tell us, give us a color and tell us what we're dealing with here. So, and it's usually quite subtle. Yeah, there we go. Okay, so I don't know how well that comes up on screen, but we get our indicator chart and we're looking here. I reckon, what do you think? I reckon that's somewhere around here. But let's see what the kids think. So kids, what color do you think this matches to on this chart? You can hold that and have a look and compare it.
Matches like this one.
So what number's that?
That's 5.
Why? Because it looks green, does it? A bit lime green?
Yeah.
I think you might be right. I think so. I think it's around that too. It's very subtle, but other ones I've tested are bright purple. So this is clearly in the acidic range, which is where we want it to be for blueberries.
Ooh, blueberries. I think it's this one.
Okay, you think 5.5. Yeah, I think somewhere there. Another way to acidify your soil, if you don't want to buy one of those premium potting mixes that are already low in pH, I highly recommend that though. It really makes your life easier. But if you do want to do it another way, you can buy a standing potting mix and use this sulphur, powdered sulphur, to correct the pH. And so you can see here, this is, says here, helps to lower the pH of alkaline soils and suitable for acid-loving plants. So I also have this because I find in our garden the soil pH tends to creep up over time, and I don't use lime or anything like that. So over time with my blueberries, I will test the pH and add some more over years to ensure that the pH stays at the right levels. And so this is an organic input, so if you're trying to grow an organic garden with nothing artificial, this is completely natural. And you can see here on the back though that you need a lot of patience. So this sulphur, powdered sulphur, actually acts really slowly. You add it to soil dry, you don't water it in because it doesn't dissolve in water. So you add it dry, follow the instructions on the back for the quantities. It comes with a little spoon to tell you how much to measure, and you work out the volume of your pot, and you work out, you know, if you need to put in 5 or 10 grams depending on the size, or 20 probably, yeah, for a pot of that size. But check the instructions on your packet because they're all a little bit different. And you mix it through. It takes at least 2 months in my experience before it starts working, so it's really slow acting. So you could have a pot prepared, mix this through, and you know, leave it to sit before you move your blueberries in. But it does take just more preparation and more patience, whereas using one of those pre-made potting mixes means you can just plant in straight away without worry or fuss. And this, you will need to test the pH again before planting in, just to make sure that it actually has dropped to the right levels and you've done your maths right. I think the consensus is it's a 5 or a 5.5, which is bang on middle, or within this range of 4.8 to 5.8, so that's spot on. We've done our own independent testing to verify that our blueberry is going to be happy in this, and it is. So next step is to, I'm going to show you how I'm going to rejuvenate some of my sad looking blueberries and hope that they bounce back by spring and we get a really good harvest. So this is our sickest plant. I was mean to it, so I'm going to give it some love this year. So this is the one I'm going to start with. So first thing I'm going to do is pull out some of the competing plants in there, because blueberries do have shallow roots and they don't like to share their space that much. They can a little, but not, you don't want to push the limits too much. So this one is a weed, so we're going to get rid of this. And I've got this bucket here. There are some plants I do want to keep in this. So this one doesn't seem to have any raspberries competing, but it's got this beautiful Robert herb, which is a really, you know, powerful antioxidant herb and great for tea. So I'm going to pull that out, and I've got a bucket of water beside me all the time so that I can pop that in and transplant that somewhere else where it's going to be happier. And I'm just going to get rid of all of these before I start repotting my blueberries. So I've got a weed there, wandering trad. Get rid of that. Okay. Pull this out. So I think I've got rid of most of the other plants around. We've got a nice clean surface to work with. You can see soil's quite rich and nice because I have, you know, used good quality potting mix, just not of the right pH. So it's got plenty of nutrients. So even though it looks hungry, it's not actually screaming out for a feed. What it's screaming out for is the right pH, so it can actually take up the food in the soil. So what I'm going to do is pull that out and repot it into the new potting mix. So I'll put on my gloves for that. I'm going to have a look at the root zone too. I suspect, you know, it might not be taking up the whole pot either. So just want to pat the sides, loosen it, and be gentle as we get it out. I can see worms flopping around. Okay, so you can see raspberries don't have the largest root zone at all. That's kind of its root ball. So a pot of this size, like this is 30 centimeters, is a good size. I mean, you can go smaller, but that just means you're going to be watering more because it's going to dry out so much quicker. So I reckon 30 centimeter pot is a really good size for most blueberries. And so what I'm going to want to do is to just gently loosen away some of that soil. And you can do this in winter too when they're dormant, but you know, I've got time now and it's looking pretty sick, so I want to get onto it ASAP. Just be gentle. It's okay to get rid of some of the roots, and I'll give that a prune as well so that the top matches the bottom later, so we'll do that later. And so kind of just get it down to the root ball, and you know, it's not massive, is it? And then so we will now put our lovely new potting mix into there. Put that in because it's not a big root zone, and this plant, as I said, was new to us last year. It was in a tiny teensy pot that we bought. You know, the root was only about this big and the plant was just one tiny little twig when we got it last year, so it's still got more growing to do. So we do want to give it enough space in the pot. And then you want it to be, because the root's not huge, I can actually plant it a little bit lower than the rim of the pot. That also means that it captures a bit more water rather than sitting above it and the water runs off. So I tend to plant it, you know, just a centimetre or two below the rim of the pot. So kind of get it to the right level, check that it's right, sit it in there, and check with your hand, yep. And then top it up with more potting mix. So just put a little bit more. We can sweep up any mess that we make later and put it back in, so don't worry about making a mess. Put that in, make sure that's firm down. Don't want any holes or gaps. Okay. Firm that down. So I've used, I check here, I've used about half a bag. So one of these 25 litre bags could fit about 2 30-centimetre pots, just to give you an indication. And so that's in there now. And then we're going to give that a good watering in. After planting, we must water in so that the roots can start growing into the rest of the soil. And we must water in well, and that also gets rid of any air pockets, so can't skip this step. And just let that soak in gradually until you see some water run out the bottom, and that means you've wet the whole mix, because you need a really wet mix for the roots to bond with the new potting mix. Okay, I can see some runoff there, and if the roots get exposed as well, and this is a good time to see whether you've got enough potting mix. If not, we're going to top it up and make sure that we don't have any exposed roots. Okay. Now, final step. You must do this. This is a non-negotiable. Mulching. Now, I'm using pine needle mulch because it's free and readily available. So we actually got this off an old Christmas tree. And you can also find it under pine trees in pine forests. And so mulching is so important for protecting soil structure, soil microbes, but particularly important for blueberries because they're so shallow rooted, as you saw, and the roots don't ever want to dry out or have sun hitting them because your plant could die. So a good layer of mulch is really important. And blueberries are lower canopy plants in the forest. They actually naturally grow under pine and oak trees. So while pine needles are not acidic, that's a myth. Once they break down, they're pH neutral. It is nice to give them a little slice of home. It just looks comfortable to have berries and pine needles as a mulch, and it's a free and readily available source of mulch. So it's one we like to use. And I will also be now going along with my other blueberries, pulling out these raspberry plants, potting them up, giving them away. And you know, some of these, you can see this one over here, the root zone has started to, the soil levels have dropped, so the roots are starting to be exposed a little bit. So it'll be time for me to just top up with some of that remaining potting mix, and also adding a beautiful layer of mulch like this and getting rid of all those free riders that are sitting along in that pot. Now, because we did damage the root zone a bit, so it did lose some root mass in the transplantation process, which is unavoidable, we do need to prune the tops a bit. Blueberries generally don't need a whole lot of pruning, but once you've transplanted, it's a good idea to shorten the stems by maybe roughly half. And these are getting really long and lanky too, so it won't hurt at all to just shorten that, and that will stimulate new growth come spring, and berries are formed on the new growth. So I'm not too worried about pruning back some of this older, leggier wood. And this one I reckon I've got a bit shorter actually. Yeah, so look at that now. It's a nice compact little plant. Taken off about half to match the root zone, and I think that's going to settle in nicely in its premium potting mix. And I almost forgot Don't forget to pop the label back in so you know what variety it is. I always love checking them up online and seeing how they match up to their descriptions, so pop the label there. So that's it for today. I hope you found that interesting and useful. As always, please do give us a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel and share with your friends if you enjoyed this. We got heaps of exciting cooking and growing content coming up shortly, so thank you so much for watching.